We have a good group joining us from all over the US. People say they're excited to hear all of the good information that our presenters have to offer. I will make a few housekeeping or add a few housekeeping details before I turn things over to our NSF colleagues. This presentation is being recorded. The recording will be made available in the coming weeks on the NSF Noyce website at nsfnoyce.org. You will also receive an email with the link to the recording when it's available. And additionally, we have closed captioning for this session. You can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. I think without further ado, there's so much to discuss that I will turn things over to Drs. Ellis and Waller.
Thank you, Betty, and thank you, AAAS team, for organizing this session for us. I am Jennifer Ellis. I am the co-lead of the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program, and I am joined by one of the other Noyce Program directors, Patrice Waller, and so she and I will be playing off and with this presentation to discuss the new solicitation, NSF 23586, that is fresh off the press. And we wanted to make sure we shared this new information, the changes with respect to track 1 and capacity building to the field. And hopefully you can spread the Noyce love to others who are interested in doing more of this work. So to help us get to know you and to hopefully customize either the way in which we present the material and or how we answer some of our questions, it's helpful to know who is in our audience. So if you could take a minute or so to answer these questions and the poll that's being pushed your way and is launched. So there are a total of 5 questions. And thank you all for populating this poll for us. It's lovely on our end to see the data come in. So I'll give it about 15 more seconds. All right, if we could end the poll and just kind of share the results. Right, okay, and so it looks like there is great variety as far as expertise or knowledge about the Noyce program, from very familiar to not familiar. So that will make sure that Patrice and I aren't, we will not skip details because we have some in our audience who are not very familiar with Noyce. So we don't want to make the assumption that you know all things Noyce. I'm glad to see that the majority of you are here for track 1 and that there is interest in capacity building, but there's also interest in our other tracks. And for them, we will touch very briefly on the other tracks, but know that there are specific webinars for tracks 2 and 3, as well as track 4. And then there's another webinar that's about our research experience that you may also be interested in as well. We do have some current folks who have some Noyce funding and those who are looking to gain Noyce funding. And great, okay, we got a great mix, Patrice. So we'll stop this sharing and we'll go back to the presentation. Okay, great. So I'm glad to know that we have a great audience here that we can, I know we'll have a really rich discussion during the Q&A period. So we're gonna talk about the new solicitation and some of your eligibility and some background and some descriptions about the pathways and really focusing on track 1 and the capacity building. And then we'll have a Q&A session. If you have some questions about that information, then Patrice and I will switch off and we'll talk about preparing the proposal, merit review process, the proposal writing tips, do another Q&A session, share some additional information, and then whatever questions you may have lingering, we'll stay around to answer those as well. Okay. And so as mentioned, there is a new solicitation, NSF 23-586. The deadline is August 29th, 2023. And moving forward, it will be the last Tuesday of August. And that's what Noyce really loves to do. We love the last Tuesday in August. And so make sure you put it on your calendar and make sure your family reunion or vacation is not scheduled around that time. This is the Noyce team, the Noyce program director team that is here to support you. And so if you have some ideas that you're interested in pitching, we would love for you to send us a one-pager, which is kind of a summary about what your proposal is. And you can send it to any one of these people who are listed here. We would gladly be willing to have a short Zoom talk with you, maybe 20-30 minutes about your idea to kind of help you flesh things out if needed, or to kind of, if there's some questions you may have about your idea, is it truly Noyce worthy, or something that would be interested, a good fit for Noyce, feel free to reach out to the team. But I will say, don't feel like you need to send us all the same message. Just find one program officer and kind of go that route. So the goals of the Noyce program are really to address the critical need for recruiting, preparing, and retaining K-12 STEM teachers and teacher leaders in high-need school districts. We're here to support talented STEM undergraduate majors and professionals to become K-12 STEM teachers in high-need school districts, to support experienced exemplary K-12 teachers to become teacher leaders in high-need school districts, and to support research on the effectiveness and retention of K-12 STEM teachers in high-need school districts. If you notice, they all ended with the same term, which is the high-need school district, and we'll talk a little bit about them in a second. With Noyce, we do have 4 major tracks. Track 1, which we're going to highlight today, which is focusing on scholarships and stipends. Track 2, track 3, and track 4. We also have the capacity building projects that can lead for tracks 1, 2, and 3 projects, kind of like helps you as like a planning grant, if you want to think of it in that way, to determine if your campus actually truly has the capacity to fully implement one of these particular tracks. And as mentioned, we also have the research experience track as well, research experience option as well for you to explore. As mentioned, when I looked at those goals, when we talked about the goals, they all stated high need school district. And so with a high need school district, what does that mean? And just in general, most school districts in our country do qualify. If you have one school that is a Title I school, that school district would be a good fit for a potential partnership and collaboration for a Noyce grant. So it's listed here. This is not a definition by the Noyce program. This is a federal definition. So we're not interpreting anything, but this is what the definition of what a high need school district is. And so when you're looking to have collaborating partners for your Noyce proposal, make sure that you kind of go through this and making sure that they're a good fit for not only your program, but more importantly, the experiences that your students will have with these respective school districts. And that I forgot to mention, it is the district. So you don't have to say high needs school, but making sure that the school district itself is a high needs school district. So with the Noyce tracks, this is just a brief overview for tracks 1 through 4 and the eligibility of them and the amount of the award for each particular track and the duration of those awards. So for track 1, it could be up to 1.2 million with a duration up to 5 years. Track 2, up to 3 million with a duration up to 6 years. The same for a track 3, and a track 4 is up to 1 million with a project duration of up to 5 years. Capacity building, that is up to $100,000. That's a new change for us this year, and it's up to a year. And as you see with all of these, there's asterisks that are there. And so in the solicitation, it explains more about what these asterisks mean as far as what how these words may exceed. If, for example, if you're collaborating with a community college, the amount of funding that you may request may exceed what's stated here. But making sure, again, that you read the solicitation based on the track that's of interest to you will really help making sure that you propose something that is strong and is within the requirements of a Noyce grant. So we wanted to give some highlights about the new solicitation and how it differs. One of the major highlights for those of you who are familiar with Noyce, track 2 and 3 used to have a cost sharing requirement. Thanks to the CHIPS Act, that is no longer a requirement. And so if you're here for track 1, but thought that track 2 and 3 was not an option for your campus, you may want to join the track 2 and 3 webinars too to learn more about them. But that's a great thing, hopefully for your campus to even consider participating in exploring the option of applying for a track 2 or 3 grant. For track 1, stipend recipients who are post-baccalaureate STEM degree individuals, and track 2 or 3 projects, the 1 year may include up to 14 months. So it could be 2 summers and a fall and a spring. That would be hopefully a good enhancement, an option for your campus. The amount for capacity building was previously $75,000. Now it's $100,000. But that does not also include the collaboration incentives that I mentioned, which were in that asterisk on the previous slide. For tracks 1, 2, and 3, grantees will collect and report data on recipients persistent as classroom teachers beyond their service commitment. And so for those of you who are familiar with Noyce grants, that is something that you were doing, and we wanted to make sure that everyone is fully aware of the requirements of a Noyce PI, and not just the Noyce PI of the institution, with tracking the scholars and the fellows and those who receive funding through your Noyce project. For tracks 1, 2, and 3, the PI team is required to clarify to include at least 1 faculty member with an advanced STEM degree who is currently housed in the science, technology, engineering, or mathematics department, and at least 1 education faculty member from an education department or equivalent at a participating or partnering U.S. institution of higher education. So making sure, for example, if you were collaborating with the math department, that one of the co-PIs had a PhD in mathematics versus mathematics education. So we wanted to make sure that we made that clear distinction with what is required for the PI teams. Lost my cursor for a second. So for track 1, as mentioned, the support for undergraduate Noyce eligible STEM majors, and there is a list as far as what is considered a Noyce eligible STEM major. And the support is $10,000 or more per year, not to exceed the cost of attendance for up to 3 years beginning in their junior year. And so we wanted to make sure and stress the or more portion, that if on your campus $10,000 does not cover the cost of attendance, that within the Noyce grant, that is fine. So if it's 15,000, 20,000, we're not stating what the number is, but the or more allows the PI to have that freedom to make sure that you are accommodating your students and customizing your program for the needs of the potential scholars or scholars on your campus. Stipends for STEM professionals is very similar as well. So these STEM professionals with Noyce eligible STEM baccalaureate degrees enroll in the teacher certification licensure program. They cannot be a teacher of record, but as long as they fit this criteria, they too can receive $10,000 or more per year, not to exceed the cost of attendance for 1 year. And on the previous slide, we defined the 1 year as a 14 months, so it could be a summer, fall, spring, and a summer. And so that's some of the newer changes that have happened for track 1 that we wanted to make sure was very clear to the field as far as what is allowable for a track 1. For the capacity building, again, these are supporting preparation for future Noyce submissions in any track. If you're here to think about capacity building just in general, or capacity building for a track 1 in particular, you're using these particular grants to develop strategies, models, to build infrastructure, to identify if you have the infrastructure, the how, why, who, when, even the where portion of it. What's the true need on your campus? And do you have the infrastructure, personnel to actually support a track 1 or any of the other tracks for Noyce? Using evidence-based innovative models and strategies to really help you with making that determination. It's a great time to collect data to determine need, interest, or capacity. you know, we're collaborating with your school districts that are high needs, and with schools, and really getting the pulse and the feeling of, is Noyce track 1, 2, 3, or 4 really appropriate for our campus? And will it help us enhance and advance STEM teacher preparation? Some examples of capacity building project activities: they help to identify or develop models, to identify or develop models, research designs, or collaborative partnerships to study STEM teacher effectiveness and retention, conduct needs assessments to determine areas of teacher shortages and interest among STEM professionals, to reimagine teacher preparation, education, and retention efforts to reflect current school needs, to establish partnerships or methods for recruiting a diverse pool of Noyce recipients, including those from talent pools that have not been fully tapped. And so really thinking innovatively about what STEM teacher preparation and professional development really would look like, not just on your campus, within your community, within your region. And so these are great opportunities for you to really think big and design a strong plan that could be used for a future proposal in the next solicitation year. So now we're going to take a quick poll. We shared some information with you, but we wanted to kind of get some feedback from you about what has been shared, and to see what you've learned, if there's some opportunity areas for us to address. So this is a true false question. We kind of went old school. About 15 more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Okay, Patrice, I might need to go back to some of my slides. But for the first one, education majors are eligible to receive a Noyce scholarship in the track 1. No, they have to be a STEM major, right? And so that's a non-negotiable with a track 1. They have to be STEM majors for a track 1. A post-baccalaureate student can receive a stipend for participation in Noyce programs during the spring semester, summer semester, and fall semester following their December completion of their undergraduate degree. That is true. So this is more of a nuanced way of looking at this 14-month option. So to kind of give you some flexibility to think about what does that look like. Traditionally, as we mentioned, 14 months, a lot of folks do the summer, fall, spring, summer. But if you have those who graduate in December, that may be an option for you as well to think of it this way. And then the last question: capacity building projects are required to have a PI, co-PI from both a STEM and education department. Okay, so I think we're in good shape. And so now we're going to stop sharing, and we're going to go to the Q&A portion of it. And so if you have questions, I can't see the chat. I do see a hand raised. So I may just stop sharing for a second so we can go to the Q&A and then go back to the slides. Patrice, will that work for you? Okay. Okay, so I see a couple of hands raised. I can just go in the order in which I see them, and it will be Kimberly Smith Burton.
Yes, I had a quick question.
Sure.
I understand that they have to be STEM majors, but at our university, if they are secondary math, they're taking just as much math as a math major. They've just added on the education courses. And we had a Noyce grant here. It ended in 2017. And so we had to justify, what happened, because they are a math major. They just have a teaching concentration added. That's how it's listed in our catalog.
So I'm not sure if you've adopted the You Teach model, or that's what you're kind of referencing. But if their degree is not math, it could be math, as you mentioned, math. It has to be math, right? So it can't be secondary mathematics.
Right.
To qualify.
Yes, it says BS in mathematics with a
Yep.
concentration in teaching. So
Yep.
that's the same thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That is a math. They're a math major. They're not a secondary math major, secondary
Okay.
education math major. So that's the distinction, right?
Okay.
So if it said secondary education math, no.
Okay.
But math education, and it's housed in the math department. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so the next one I see is Julie.
Hi, thank you. Back on one of your slides, you mentioned the in track 1 that the STEM professionals. Now, I'm assuming, does that mean, I'm in California, we're a 5th-year credential state. Does that mean the folks who are our credential candidates when you're talking about STEM professionals, or are you talking about folks coming from outside? That's one question. And then the other question I had is that it said they cannot be the teacher of record. And I'm wondering if that's a change from before, because many of our candidates are interns, in which case they are a version of, they are the teacher of record.
So that, to your latter question, that has not changed. They cannot be the teacher of record. And so,
Okay.
And so if they are in a, let's say if they're a teacher of record, they would not qualify to be a Noyce scholar or a Noyce fellow. Depending on how your teacher, your student teaching program, if it's an apprenticeship program, that's not a teacher of record. So that's different. But if they are listed as a teacher of record, then they would not be eligible to receive Noyce funding as a scholar under a track 1 or a track 2.
Okay, I guess I don't know the subtleties.
And I'll just speak to the piece about the credential candidate, given the ramifications of the way the credentials were set up in California. So the STEM professional would be the credential candidate. That would be that 3rd-year funding that's available through the stipends and scholarship track 1. So they could do junior, senior year, and then that 5th year or the STEM professional year. But again, it could only be within that 14-month period. So I'm not sure how your credential program is set up, but if it's the credential program lasts beyond that point.
No, it's a summer, fall, spring.
Okay,
So
there you
it's
go.
just we've been having we've had Noyce funding in the past, and so now I'm concerned about. Anyways, I'll figure it out on our end. Thank you.
And we'll offer this to everyone. Feel free to contact us to have one-on-one conversations specifically about your program, or your cognizant program officer could also kind of speak to some of those questions that you might have.
And so the next one we see is Mike Egan.
Hi, yeah. Something I noticed that I wondered about for track 1, well, 2 and 3 as well. Grantees will collect and report data on recipients' persistence as classroom teachers beyond their service commitment. Wow, that could be a 40-year career. Is there a sense of, are there any parameters there at all? I just wonder how long we keep following up, but yeah.
So there is parameters where that is concerned. So, we really want to make sure beyond the, they would have, 8 years to fulfill this commitment of their teaching criteria. And so typically, what we didn't say, Patrice and I have been Noyce PIs and have had Noyce funding as well. So, and for those of you who are familiar with Noyce, Noyce is a working grant. And so, and as Mike mentioned, it is working even beyond the life of the funding of the grant. And so making sure those on your campus understand that, and that you have the infrastructure to track students beyond is essential. And so you're making sure that they are, you need to know where they're teaching, what they're teaching. And so it's maybe 8 years, depending on how long it takes them to fulfill that commitment. And so typically that's, for me, that's how long I've had to track some of my scholars. And so that's relationship building is very important in a Noyce grant. So making sure that, your scholars or your fellows have a good relationship with you. And so it's easier for you to track them. David Long? But no, I mean, so Mike, it's not 40 years that you're tracking folks.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, okay, so 8 years is a good ending point, as long as they've met their commitment. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
But I mean, and for your program, you may want to do a longitudinal study. So, don't allow us to limit you on what you want to track. But David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Let's say you write a Noyce 1 grant and the total cost of the grant approaches the full $1.2 million. And you're somewhere around 61%, 39% for scholarships, and then the other programming. Is it possible, or is it forbidden to join up that funding with, say, an additional foundation if they wanted to fund additional activities? Like, would that somehow skew that 60-40 balance? Is that possible? Is there any precedent? Just don't know. We had a partner ask about this during one of our last meetings.
Pausing because I'm trying to see, would there be a conflict? As long as it doesn't skew your 60% in participant support, but if you feel it's going to help enhance your program, I mean, we're all here to support, STEM teacher preparation. And so if you've got other funding that would allow you to do more, I mean, I wouldn't turn down money to help support. I don't think we would be in a position to tell you to turn down funding that would support scholars, but being careful. And I see the lead's hand, Kathleen Bergin, who is here, who would definitely be able to provide a better, more definitive answer that would probably not get anybody into legal trouble. So Kathleen?
I'm trying to find buttons here. My colleagues are doing a great job, but I've been doing this for more than 19 years, so I've had a lot of the questions. If you have a partner that is going to augment your work, that is great. What you don't want to do, remember you said you're going to ask for the full $1.2 million probably. What you don't want to do is indicate a financial dollar amount that partner is going to commit. You don't want what we call voluntary committed funds. Now, I'm getting into the weeds, but it's important. You can have voluntary uncommitted funds. So you have a partner, they say, we'll fund 10 more scholarships than this. Just don't put a number value on it. As long as there's not a dollar sign, you can have voluntary, uncommitted funds. And it doesn't go in the budget. You can put it in the description, which they're going to talk about in a little bit. You can also put it in another document that you have to complete, which is the facilities, equipment, and other resources. The very last category is called other resources. So you could say the blah, blah, blah community foundation will be funding 10 additional scholarships. Just don't put a dollar sign with it. And while I've got the platform, I'm going to add to a few other things. So to the question about the math degree that's in the math department and says math with a specialization in secondary education. You want to look at the SIP code. That's C as in Charlie, I as in indigo, P as in purple. The SIP code. If it has a math SIP code, and this is in the solicitation, but if it has a math SIP code, you're fine. If it does not have a math SIP code and it has an education SIP code, then you're not fine. Okay, changing subjects one more time. Remember that true false question where some of you got it wrong? You said education majors could be supported. They have to have a STEM, be working on, get a STEM degree. However, they could do a dual degree and get 2 degrees, a baccalaureate in a STEM, not education, and then a baccalaureate in STEM. And then finally, I want to make a comment about what I call sometimes the California situation or the 5th year. You can only provide 3 years scholarship, junior, senior, and 1 more year when the institution does not certify at the undergraduate level. Okay, junior, senior, and 1 more year, only if there's no certification at the undergraduate level. Now, nuance. If there is certification at the undergraduate level, but the program of study that you have for your students means they need more time to meet all those STEM requirements and all those education requirements, you can give them 3 years of funding starting in the junior year, but they have to remain baccalaureate students. In other words, they don't graduate. They get junior year, senior year, and another year before graduation. So the only time that you can do 3 years and the 3rd year is post-baccalaureate is if your institution does not certify at the undergraduate level. Thank you for letting me interrupt. And I see you have some more questions.
We do, and we're gonna put a pause on those questions. So if it's something that we're gonna get to your question. If it's something that I know how I am, if it's something that you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna remember it, put it in the chat and then keep your hand up and we're gonna call on you. I'm gonna share my slides again so Patrice can go for the next half of the question of the presentation, and then we'll jump back to the Q&A, okay? So keep your hands up and then I'll go on that order. Okay, let me mute myself.
I was going to say, thank you guys so much for your questions. Jennifer alluded to the fact that we would have a rich discussion, being that we had such a good group here. So continue to think about the things that we're talking about and write down or drop those questions in the chat. So now we're going to talk a little bit about proposal preparation and what should go into your actual submission. So at the onset of your submission, you're going to have a project summary. And this is the 1-page overview, if you will, of what you're proposing. And so in the overview, you want to indicate what specific track you are looking to have funded. In this particular webinar, we're focusing on track 1, which are scholarships and stipends track. You also want to list the name of the institutions or partners that you plan to collaborate with, include the high need school district, and if you have it, the nonprofit organization that will be working with your project. So you'll have an overview section. You'll also have a section on intellectual merit that will briefly describe how important this work is in terms of, or how well you've worked to design your project. And then a brief section on the broader impacts, which is really talking about how the work will ultimately benefit STEM education. So all of this is in that 1-pager project summary. Then when we go over to the project description for track 1, you want to make sure that description is no more than 15 pages. And in those 15 pages, you'll have all of these sections that are clearly identified, but they don't necessarily have to be in a specific order. We encourage that the order makes sense, and ultimately you're telling a story of what you plan to do. So we talked about the broader impacts. You want to include the scope of the project, which really provides details on the number and the amount of scholarships that you wish to fund, the stipends or fellowships, the rationale for the number of scholarships that you'll have. Talk a little bit about the cumulative number of STEM majors that you'll support. So that's the scope. What is your overall plan for the scholarships and funding? In the recruitment and selection section, you want to talk about how your plan for recruitment and selecting. You want to be very specific in that section, really detailing the application process, how you're going to ensure the scholars ultimately fit within the criteria of the solicitation, as well as what you have proposed within your project and how you'll go about evaluating and selecting those participants. In the project administration, you'll just describe the management and administrative structure of your project. In the teacher induction and development section, you want to make sure that you're talking about a plan for supporting scholars after they have finished their work at the institution. They're in those early years of teaching and fulfilling the commitment that they've made after having received the grant. Degree preparation or leadership program. This is important because this is telling the readers exactly which degrees you're intending to fund. Are you focused on only bio and chemistry majors? Are you planning to support all STEM majors? What are your focus areas in terms of degrees, master's degrees, or any type of licensures if you're in like a track 2 or 3 project? You want to, again, in track 2 or 3, cost sharing has been removed, but if there is some uncommitted cost sharing, as Kathleen so kindly came on and talked about, you can include that if you'd like. What project activities will you have, and how will you support those project activities? And this is where it really, this is where you really get to craft your proposal and make it specific to how you plan to support the students that you have within the context of your project. How will you monitor and remain in compliance with the requirements of the Noyce project? Somebody asked a question earlier about this idea of having to report, right? And Jennifer mentioned having the infrastructure to really report beyond the lifespan of your actual project on your students, keeping track of them, and if they are making or meeting the requirement that they said that they would. Also, this is we also get some interesting questions in this area around, oh, I had a student that didn't make it to that cutoff point. What should I do? And so in that monitoring and compliance area, you talk about a plan for recouping, if you have to, the funds from those students that did not complete or meet their requirements. The evaluation plan, you have to have an external evaluator for track 1. And so how do you plan to evaluate and assess the overall effectiveness of your Noyce project? How do you plan to disseminate the knowledge gained and learned from this, whether it be at conferences or through, presentations or publications, or even just sharing across district, within district? What is your plan for dissemination? What collaborations will you have, whether it be with school districts, specific schools that have already been identified as high need? What are your collaborations? And then if you've received previous support from NSF or any of that, we want to make sure that you include, not just that you have the support, but that you include results from that prior support. Note that NSF doesn't necessarily require intellectual merit via identified section, but the merit review process does evaluate overall the intellectual merit of the project. So whether you choose to include it as a specific section or not, overall the project is evaluated through that lens. So similar in the capacity building project, you have to also submit specific clearly identified sections, but the capacity building proposals should be no more than 10 pages. You want to definitely talk about the broader impact. And then you want to talk about a rationale. You want to provide a justification about why you need a capacity building or why your institution would benefit from having a capacity building project. Identify what areas you might be lacking and how the capacity building project could help you prepare to submit a competitive proposal for either tracks 1, 2, 3, or 4. You want to include a project plan. What are the project's goals? What are the specific timelines, right, for collecting data? What are you going to assess? What are you going to do within that year of this capacity building to ultimately prepare you for submission of a specific track? What partnerships, what people are they, or what organizations, institutions, schools, school leaders will you have as you're working through this capacity building project to help prepare you for that future submission? How are you going to assess the overall project outcomes? Keep in mind that for a capacity building project, you could have an external evaluator, or you could have an advisory board in terms of assessment. Are there results from prior NSF support projects? If so, what are the results? And then, of course, program management. How do you plan to handle the administrative nature of the project? So some additional requirements specifically for track 1, you want to include letters of collaboration. You should have at least 4 letters that come from the Dean of the College of Education and the Dean of the STEM college. I know they're called different things given the institution. So the STEM college and the College of Education, those are 2 different letters. You should also have a letter from the high need school district administrator, like the superintendent or someone on that level. And then if you've identified schools that you will be partnering with directly, you also want to have a letter of collaboration from the principal or the comparable school administrator. In the capacity building project, the letters are allowed, but they're not required. Unless you are trying to get that additional support that Jennifer mentioned at the beginning, because you have a collaboration with a community college. So then you have a collaboration incentive, and in order to justify that incentive, there will need to be a letter of collaboration. And then in the supplementary document section, you want to make sure that you only include what's allowable there, because sometimes if additional information is included there, your proposal could be returned without review. And so you want to make sure that you only have the letters of collaboration, bio sketches of the project's independent evaluator. You want to have any postdoctoral research mentoring plan if you have that as a part of your Noyce project. And then of course your data management plan should also go in that section. And then now we're going to talk just a little bit about the merit review process. The merit review process is a process that we use at the National Science Foundation ultimately to engage in a robust review, a rigorous review, if you will, of all the proposals that we receive. And in this process, we really are looking on a higher level, we're looking to see how the proposed project stands to advance knowledge and understanding within its field or across different fields. And then we also want to know, what is the potential for the proposed project to benefit society or advance specific outcomes that are desired within society? And so in the merit review process, the proposals after they are received and have, you can go to the next slide, Jennifer. After they've been received and they go through, an overall compliance check, reviewers and NSF staff, a plethora of people will go through and look for look at different components of intellectual merit and broader impacts within the proposal. And so these are some of the tenets that you all should be thinking about as you're putting together your proposal that we will be looking for as the proposals are being evaluated. So to what extent do the proposed activities suggest and explore creativity or creative, original, and potential transformative concepts. How are you, in a sense, carrying out the proposed activities well? What is your plan to carry out the proposed activities well? Does your plan incorporate a way to assess, right? What's your assessment plan? How is your leadership team? How well qualified, I'm sorry, is the individual team or organization to conduct proposed activities? And are there adequate resources available, whether it be at the institution or throughout the collaborations to carry out the proposed activities? So here's some tips from us to you. Very important things to remember. It's like, this is the insider knowledge. Make sure that you are aware of, first of all, things that are being funded through Noyce. You can go on our website and look and see things that have been recently funded, where we're funding all of those things. And then also take a look at, make sure that you are able to discuss results of projects that have advanced knowledge in the field that you're planning to or you're proposing your project within. Make sure you cite literature to support any of the claims that you're making within your project. Include timelines, benchmarks in your plan for independent feedback. Propose a cost-effective but high-impact budget. Make sure, and I'll say this again down at number 9, but make sure that's not a mix match in terms of what you're asking for budget-wise and what you're proposing within the project. Make sure you have included all required details in the section that we talked about. This is very much evident and can be found, by really looking in detail at your solicitation or at our solicitation. If you have submitted something previously and it's been declined, you have to make a substantive change in order to resubmit, right? So of course, I'm sure everyone knows you can't just resubmit the same thing. So make sure that you take into consideration the feedback that has been provided by the reviewers. Also take a look at the PO comments that are there. We also encourage you to contact a cognizant PO if you have questions about the feedback that you receive. We are open to taking meetings with those that have been declined, because ultimately we want to make an impact in STEM teacher preparation. And so we want to help to prepare as many proposers. Put yourself in the reviewer's place. Make sure that you are thinking about or having someone else look at your proposal and ask really deep questions about the proposal. Provide supportive details in terms of who your partnerships are and how they make sense, or how they connect well with your project. And then I mentioned the last 2 already, but make sure your budget aligns with the scope of work, and call us, email us, reach out to us, send us a concept paper. We are willing and able and open to engaging with the public. Okay, so I think we're back to another question and answer session.
Yeah, and Patrice, what I think we might need to do is because we have so many other, I think we've got a lot of questions. We're just going to do these slides real quickly. There's some other, some critical resources, the solicitation. Make sure you use that. Go to the Noyce program webpage. You will have access to these slides, so don't worry about that. The PAPG is your friend, so making sure you review the PAPG will also be helpful to you. There's some other programs within our Directorate of STEM Education that may be of interest to you: improving undergraduate STEM education, the scholarships in STEM or STEM, and Discovery Research Pre-K or DRK-12. Discovery Pre-K to 12 is another one that's maybe of interest to you in your work. And this is a list of the cognizant program officers that are here. And then we also have a plug for some upcoming webinars that are for the other tracks, for tracks 2 and 3. We're also talking about capacity building there. There's a webinar on research experiences in STEM settings, and I'll show this slide again after we finish the Q&A. There's a webinar for track 4. And then there's another plug for an IUSE for STEM prep. And so we do take proposals that are focusing on STEM preparation, and that's the date for that webinar. But I wanted to kind of maybe just jump ahead to get that out the way, since we've got 10 minutes left, and then go back to the Q&A. So I'll stop my sharing here and I will go to the list. And so the order kind of got a little skewed.
I think Babette that's who I see first on my screen. Yeah.
What do you see?
Babette.
So should I jump in?
Yeah, sure, go
Yes,
for it.
please.
Hi, Patrice.
Hi.
I have a few questions. First, just quick, what did you mean by independent feedback in that slide? I wasn't sure.
An external evaluator?
Okay. I didn't know if you meant somehow like the districts. I wasn't sure what was meant by that. Perfect. The other thing is you'd said at least 4 letters, but then you intimated that particular sites didn't need to be identified. So if you didn't have sites identified, would it just be 3 letters, or do you want sites explicitly in there?
At minimum, you need to have at least 4 letters. So those 4 that Patrice identified, you would have to have those 4. And so as your project evolves, you may get other collaborating partners in other school districts or other schools that were, for example, for field placements, there may be other schools that you collaborate with, but you need to at least identify, we've got to know that you have at least those basic partnerships to implement your project.
Okay. And then my third question was going back to something you said about who can serve as a PI. So you have to have a PI have a PhD in mathematics. Is that what I thought I heard?
The PI has to have a STEM degree. So it could be, biology. It has to be a PI with a STEM degree, not STEM education, a STEM degree, and then one that's in the College of Education. Now that one in the College of Education could be a, math educator or a science educator, or just a, a general teacher preparator, educator. But we want to make sure that you have at least one PI that has a STEM degree.
But
And
by
it's
degree, do you mean
located-
PhD, or could it be master's and bachelor's?
PhD.
PhD, and that person needs to be housed in a STEM department. I should have also said that part. So I think previously you've been able to have a math educator in a math department. So the solicitation now says that you need a mathematician in a math department and someone from a College of Education.
And with Noyce, we're not limiting the number of PIs. So you can have, we don't want you to think, oh, if you've got a PhD in math education, I can't collaborate with you. Yes, you can be one of the co-PIs, but we also need another person in the department that has a PhD in math. We're just using math. They could have a PhD in physics, biology, chemistry, electrical engineering.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. James Madden. James, you're still muted. Uh-oh. There
Okay,
you
now,
go.
thanks for waiting. I need to ask another detail about the question about the 3 years of support. We have a program in which people can either graduate with a certification and a BA, or they can graduate with a BA and then obtain certification in the 12 months following graduation. And so my understanding, based on what Kathleen said, is that we could support our undergraduates for the 2 undergraduate years, but we could not pay any support for them after they have entered their internship or their post-bac residency. Now, then there's a corollary question to that. Does their post-bac residency year count as towards their teaching commitment? They would be on a provisional certification during that year. That was my first question. The second question is, can you give me the points that the letters of support need to contain? My understanding from previous years was that you don't want an elaborate support letter with high praise, which is non-specific, but you want commitments to specific things in the grant. And I wonder if you can give me more guidance on that.
So I can answer your second question probably easier than the first. Patrice, you want to answer the first part of his question?
Yes,
or-
I was just gonna say, just so we're clear, so if you're in, just to reiterate what Kathleen said, if your institution provides a credential or certification prior to the end of the undergraduate phase, then you cannot support that additional 5th year in terms of Noyce. Their commitment in terms of teaching begins when they are the teacher of record. They are certified or credentialed, if you will, in terms of teaching. And so it sounds like you're saying that they're on a provisional certification, but they will still be in an apprenticeship model, if I'm not mistaken. And so as a result, I don't believe that their teaching
They would be
begins that
teacher-
year. It will be the year following when they actually are completely done with those certification requirements and they are in the classroom as a teacher of record on their own.
This sounds like something where we need to share with you the documentation, the official documentation from the state. Because they are teacher of record, but they have a modified certification.
Okay.
So then they would know that, to me, it just sounds like that's not a Noyce eligible program, right? So the first scenario that you stated, that would work well with Noyce. But the
Mhm.
second scenario, unless Kathleen raises her hands and says otherwise, I don't see how that would be a Noyce eligible program. And Kathleen's hand is up. So let's let Kathleen speak.
So just quickly, yes, Jim, you may want to send one of us some of this, but don't send us the documentation. Provisional certification is not okay by Noyce, okay? We want our teachers that are supported by the National Science Foundation to be fully certified before they are the teacher of record. Now, I know there are different certification models. I know there are different teacher education models, but we only want to place Noyce teachers in classrooms when they are fully certified. I wanted to add this. If you certify at the undergraduate level, full certification, not provisional, those individuals getting a STEM degree and certified can receive Noyce funding. The other group that you mentioned, if you are a post-bac and you have a STEM degree, then the Noyce program can support just that post-bac year while you get full certification. And in your track 1 proposal, you can do both of those. We refer to the ones that are doing the junior, senior year, we call them scholarships. For just the post-bac year, we call them stipends. But you can do both in your track 1, or you can focus your proposal only on undergraduates, or you can focus your proposal only on post-bac STEM degreed individuals.
Thank you.
Thank
And then-
you. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh, your
then the-
second part of your question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Could you?
Yeah, the second part of the question is, what are the, do you have some guidelines for the letters of support? What do they absolutely need to say and what should they not contain?
So unlike many of the NSF proposals where there's like that generic statement in the PAPG that you typically include,
Yes.
that's not what you're going to do for this. And so really making sure that what's included in the proposal is supported in your letter. So if you're saying the school district will allow you to have, let's say, field experiences, we would expect that piece of it would be included in that particular letter.
Okay, thank you.
So it should be complementary to what you're, to the work that you're already stating that they're going to be doing.
Okay, good, thank you.
And the last name, or the first name is Nalline.
You spelled it correctly. It's Naleen.
Naleen, I thought so, but I didn't want
No
to
worries.
not do it justice.
No
Naleen.
worries. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. Thank you again for this webinar. This has been really helpful. I posted my question in the chat and I'll reiterate it again. In terms of the commitment for their teaching in the high needs school, is it 2 years for every year they earn the scholarship? That is still correct. And the second question is, are they required to commit to those 2 years of teaching in a high needs school in the same school district that they are interning in? For example, let's say they did move out of state is that okay as long as they're committed into a high need school?
Yes, so a lot of times, PIs will put, that they would work in the state if I was in Tennessee.
Correct.
That may be aspirational because it may be easier for you as a PI to track them, but as NSF does not make that requirement, or so they are free to teach in any of the 50 states and probably are in their territories as well, as long as it's a high need school district. That we don't put those barriers on our scholars. We want them to spread their knowledge and enhance the students that they want to.
That makes life much easier. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
McCarthy, last name?
Maeve.
Maeve.
Hi. So you actually answered one of my questions earlier about the letters of collaboration, because I think we had followed the PAPG very carefully last year, and then in our reviews got some feedback saying it lacked details. So now we know what kind of details we needed to do. So I have a couple of questions. So we have a co-PI who is a mathematics educator in the mathematics department. We also have a co-PI who's from the College of Education. So as I understand it, we need STEM PIs or co-PIs in addition to that. Will our biologists suffice?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And we love biology. We're talking about math a lot, but yes, the more the merrier. But I was going to say, yeah, you're going to need another friend to join your team.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like we've got it covered. That's great. The other suggestion that came from earlier was this idea of a substantive change from what we submitted in the past. And you know, I'm wondering what counts as substantive. You know, for example, one of the comments we got was that we were asking too much of our Noyce fellows. You know, we had too many things they were going to have to do. And so if we cut that back, but keep some of the core stuff, is that considered a substantive change? Or do we need to change some of the emphasis of some of the projects and activities?
Patrice, you want to jump in there?
I would say is editing the proposal based on the feedback that you have is definitely, you know, a change because you're not submitting the same idea. Just keep in mind that my assumption is that your plan for activities should have been connected through out your proposal. So with the literature, with all of the other things. So if you're changing the plan for specific activities, think about how that leads to changes in other areas of the proposal.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The next one, Morton.
Yeah, so this is a question concerning the high need, the definition of high need. So there's a second requirement that has to deal, that is dealing with teachers and attrition and so forth. So I'm just wondering if you know of a database that has all this information that you need to get from schools and districts.
That would be, I think that would be something that you would have to work specifically with your district that you're considering partnering with in terms of collecting that data. Ideally, that districts are thinking about how they are supporting teacher retention and thinking about attrition within their school district. So you would want to work with those school districts to collect the data specifically on the district.
And really, if the district has one school that is a Title I school, then the likelihood that it's a high need school district. So you might even want to start with that conversation. Do you have one school in your school district that's a Title I school, and kind of start there?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then you may want to consider a different partner.
Yeah.
So a lot of our urban rural schools, school districts would be, you know, some that you may want to consider.
Right, thank you.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for doing this. I have a quick question about the collaboration incentive part of the capacity building. Not capacity building, of the track one. We are going to be partnering with a minority serving two-year institution. So if we apply for the extra money, is the 60% requirement of the entire 1.55, or is it a 60% requirement of the 1.2, and the extra 250 is for building this relationship with the partner and, for example, doing things specifically with the community college?
So, and Kathleen may need to raise her hand, and because I'm thinking about my own personal experience, and so I don't want to give a personal experience answer to this question. What I will say is, depending on how you have things funded, but go ahead, Kathleen.
It's off the total direct costs. And if you are going to be giving a subaward to the community college, that subaward is part of the total direct costs. So it would be 60%. I'm not saying of the 1.55, because that's more than the total. That's the request. The total direct cost plus what they call indirect cost, that's the total request. But the 60% is off of the total direct, and that subaward would be in there.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you.
I think we got all of the questions that people wanted to orally say, and then if there are some in the chat, we can check on those. But if you have other questions, feel free to raise your hands. We went a little over, but we can stay. I know I can. I think Patrice has a harder stop than I do. But if you have additional questions, please let us know. We're here. We would love to get more proposals from you for this particular solicitation. So ask away.
So I guess we can kind of try to go through some of the questions that have been dropped in the chat. I'm trying to make sure we don't answer those that have already been. There was a question about needing a doctorate degree and or an advanced degree in terms of that STEM person in the STEM department. And so the solicitation specifically says an advanced degree, which is my understanding defined as beyond the bachelor. So if there's a master's degree, I see Kathleen is unmuting. So correct me if I'm wrong, Kathleen. The advanced degree is the doctorate, or it includes those specifically at universities where faculty members do have master's degrees in STEM?
It is the doctorate in an institution where faculty have doctorates. The reason we didn't just put in the word doctorate and said advanced degree is there may be a community college. Many community colleges, doctorates are not what the faculty have. And we would like community colleges to be part of this work. So if the department doesn't have doctorates, then the masters can stand. But typically, four-year institutions, R1s, et cetera, regionals, their department has doctorate degrees in the STEM disciplines.
And I'll just say it loud. I see one question. If you have a dean of arts and sciences and thus one dean for both math, our focus in education, so I'm assuming education falls under arts and sciences, we would only need 3 letters, or would one dean and 2 department chairs suffice for this requirement? I would say that because that's a different structure. I think to cover all bases, what you suggest here is good. 1 dean and the 2 department chairs, I think that's a good strategy for that. So there are no questions about, is the math department and the education department well represented, because there's not 2 deans. So in that case, you might need 3 letters. And yeah. Are there any other questions you see, Patrice, in here that we haven't?
I think that was all of them.
Yeah. Okay, still need, thank you. Reposting my, Richard, reposting my question here.
And Naleen has her hand raised.
Yeah, so Richard, your question is yes. So if even if your dean is a co-PI, they would need to write a letter to be included. Yeah. Naylene, yes.
A very, very quick question. Sorry about that. If I have the summary, the project summary fairly written up that I would like to share with one of the program managers, is that okay if I include the intellectual merit as well as the broader impacts for you to review initially? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's typically what in our one pager, it's really what people submit is kind of a draft of their program summary or the
Okay.
project summary, which is, you know, kind of an overview and then intellectual merit and broader impact. So great, yeah.
Okay.
And again, don't spam us all. So just choose one. And then if we don't have the capacity to look at it right now, we will send it out to say, hey, does anybody else on the team have some bandwidth to meet with you? But you don't feel the need that you've got to send it to all of us.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. And again, we have some upcoming webinars. If you are interested in joining us for the other tracks or other of your colleagues that would be interested in joining, I will share screen too that are here. So this is our little commercial, but thank you again for attending. And we definitely appreciate your engagement with us today.
And all of us at AAAS want to thank all of you for attending, and rest assured that if you're thinking about attending another webinar on proposal writing, I will be sending you a reminder. So, and again, also you'll be getting the slides and a link to the archive probably next week as soon as we activate it in YouTube. So thanks again for everybody. Such a rich discussion and probably so much more to talk about. Bye-bye from AAAS.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.